Yesterday was very nice. It was outdoors, backyard. You've been to that place before? Ramakanta's home? Ramakanta?
Sangalpa, yeah, I'm not been to there. Very nice.
Quince trees, peach trees, pear trees, apple trees, fresh air. I'm just pulling your leg, that's all. So we started to read from the Demigods' prayers to Kṛṣṇa while still within the womb of Devaki. In preparation for Kṛṣṇa Janmashtami, I was looking at several paintings of the demigods hovering around within the prison house of Kṛṣṇa. Devaki was there, and she was effulgent, radiant, carrying Kṛṣṇa within her womb. And this whole chapter, chapter 2, Garbha Stuti, that's how the whole section is known. Text 20, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead was within her womb, Devaki illuminated the entire atmosphere in the place where she was confined. Seeing her jubilant, pure, and smiling, Kṛṣṇa thought, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, who is now within her, will kill me. Devaki has never before looked so brilliant and jubilant. Kṛṣṇa thought, what is my duty now? The Supreme Lord who knows his purpose will not give up his prowess. Devaki is a woman. She is my sister. And moreover, she is now pregnant. If I kill her, my reputation, opulence, and duration of life will certainly be vanquished. A person who is very cruel is regarded as dead, even while living. For while he is living, or after his death, everyone condemns him. And after the death of a person in the bodily concept of life, he is undoubtedly transferred to the hell, known as Andhatama. He knew a few things. Shukadev Goswami said, deliberating in this way, Kṛṣṇa, although determined to continue in enmity toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead, refrained from the vicious killing of his sister. He decided to wait until the Lord was born and then do what was needed. While sitting on his throne, he was very Kṛṣṇa conscious, or in a sitting room, while lying on his bed, or indeed while situated anywhere, while eating, sleeping, or walking, Kṛṣṇa saw only his enemy, the Supreme Lord Rishikesha. In other words, by thinking of his all-pervading enemy, Kṛṣṇa became unfavorably Kṛṣṇa conscious. That's Prabhupada's additional. Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, accompanied by great sages like Narada, Devala and Vyas, and by other demigods like Indra, Chandra, and Varuna, invisibly approached the room of Devaki where they all joined in offering their respectful obeisances and prayers to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can bestow blessings upon everyone. So yesterday we read the first of their prayers. There's a long purport. We didn't read the long purport. The last paragraph of the long purport. The demigods must offer worship in obedience to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but one might argue that since the Supreme Godhead was within the womb of Devaki, he was also coming in a material body. Then why should he be worshipped? Why should one make a distinction between an ordinary living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead? These questions are answered in the following verses. So prayer number 2. Doesn't say which demigod, but the demigods. The body, or the total body and the individual body, are of the same composition, may figuratively be called, quote, the original tree. From this tree, which fully depends on the ground of material nature, come 2 kinds of fruit: the enjoyment of happiness and the suffering of distress. The cause of the tree, forming its 3 roots, is association with the 3 modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. The fruits of bodily happiness have 4 tastes. Bodily happiness, religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, liberation, which are experienced through 5 senses. For acquiring knowledge in the midst of the 6 circumstances: lamentation, illusion, old age, death, hunger, and thirst. The 7 layers of bark covering the tree are skin, blood, muscle, fat, bone, marrow, and semen. And the 8 branches of the tree are the 5 gross and 3 subtle elements, names them. The tree of the body has 9 hollows: eyes, ears, nostrils, mouth, rectum, and genitals, and 10 leaves, the 10 airs passing through the body. In this tree of the body, there are 2 birds. One is the individual soul and the other is the super soul. Pretty interesting. Prayer number 2, like Sankhya. Oh Lord. No. Yeah. The efficient cause of the material world, manifested with its many varieties as the original tree, is you, O Lord. You are also the maintainer of this material world, and after annihilation, you are the one in whom everything is conserved. Those who are covered by your external energy cannot see you behind this manifestation, but theirs is not the vision of learned devotees. O Lord, you are always in full knowledge, and to bring all good fortune to all living entities, you appear in different incarnations. To bring all good fortune to all living entities, you appear in different incarnations, all of them transcendental to the material creation. When you appear in these incarnations, you are pleasing to the pious and religious devotees, but for non-devotees, you are the annihilator. O lotus-eyed Lord, by concentrating one's meditation on your lotus feet, which are the reservoir of all existence. And by accepting those lotus feet as the boat by which to cross the ocean of nescience, one follows in the footsteps of the Mahajanas. By this simple process, one can cross the ocean of nescience as easily as one steps over the hoofprint of a calf. Very familiar metaphor from the Bhagavatam. One can cross over the ocean of nescience as easily as one steps over the hoofprint of a calf. O Lord, who resembles the sun, the shining sun, you are always ready to fulfill the desire of your devotee, and therefore you are known as the desire tree, Kalpabriksha. When acharyas completely take shelter under your lotus feet in order to cross the fierce ocean of nescience, they leave behind on earth the method by which they cross. And because you are very merciful to your other devotees, you accept this method to help them. Important verse, right? Important verse. It's a very inspiring verse. Let's read the purport. This statement reveals how the merciful acharyas and the merciful Supreme Personality of Godhead together help the serious devotee who wants to return home, back to Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his teachings to Rupa Goswami, said, Brahmanda Brahmete Kona Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Kṛṣṇa Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bija. One can achieve the seed of Bhakti Lata devotional service by the mercy of Guru and Kṛṣṇa. The duty of the Guru is to find the means, according to the time, circumstance, and candidate, by which one can be induced to render devotional service, which Krishna accepts from a candidate who wants to be successful in going back home, back to Godhead. After wandering throughout the universe, a fortunate person within this material world seeks shelter of such a guru or acharya who trains the devotee in the suitable ways to render service according to the circumstances, so that the Supreme Personality of Godhead will accept the service. This makes it easier for the candidate to reach the ultimate destination. The acharya's duty, therefore, is, one more time, to find the means by which the devotees may render service according to references from Shastra. Rupa Goswami, for example, in order to help subsequent devotees, published such devotional books as Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Thus, it is the duty of such duty of the acharya to publish books that will help future candidates to take up the method of service and become eligible to return home back to Godhead by the mercy of the Lord. In our Krishna consciousness movement, this same path is being prescribed and followed. Thus, the devotees have been advised to refrain from 4 sinful activities: illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling, and to chant 16 rounds a day. These are bona fide instructions. Because in the Western countries, constant chanting is not possible, one should not artificially imitate Haridas Thakur. Not too many people are trying to do that anyways. But should follow this method. Krishna will accept a devotee who strictly follows the regular principles and the method prescribed in the various books and literatures published by the authorities. The acharya gives the suitable method for crossing the ocean of nations by accepting the boat of the Lord's lotus feet. And if this method is strictly followed, the followers will ultimately reach the destination by the grace of the Lord. This method is called acharya sampradaya. It is therefore said, sampradaya vihinaye mantraste nishpala mata. The acharya sampradaya is strictly bona fide. Therefore, one must accept the acharya sampradaya. Otherwise, one's endeavors will be futile. Narottam Das Thakur therefore sings, Tandera charana sevi bhakta sanivas janame janame hai eabidas. One must worship the lotus feet of the acharya and live within the society of devotees. No, I'm just stretching. I've been sitting in one position all day long, so I'm having fun, just stretching. Thanks anyway. I wonder what that thing was. Then one's endeavor to cross over nations will surely be successful. I'm going to read the next one. Follow-up. What do you see? What's the follow-up for that one? In brackets, this is not part of the verse, it's that's the verse. Someone may say that aside from devotees, who always seek shelter at the Lord's lotus feet, there are those who are not devotees, but who have accepted different processes for attaining salvation. What happens to them? In answer to this question, Lord Brahma and the other demigods said, "O Lord aside, Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest position may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet." Long purport. Long purport. There are persons who advocate accepting any process and who say that whatever process one accepts will lead one to the same goal. But that is refuted in this verse, where such persons are referred to as vimukta maninaha, signifying that although they think they have attained the highest perfection, in fact they have not. Controversy. Yeah. There's someone has taken the position, and I meant to spend some time today and look closely at this position. According to one devotee, the final verse of the entire Vedanta Sutra indicates clearly that one does not fall from the spiritual world. So that devotee, based upon looking at the Sanskrit of the Vedanta Sutra and Baladev's commentary, says even those who are merged in the Brahmajyoti, they will never fall from the Brahmajyoti. And this devotee takes the position that when Prabhupada says that those who merge with the Brahmajyoti but then fall down from the Brahmajyoti because their ananda is not being met, their innate desire for happiness is not being met, and so they fall back down again to material activity. That's referring to these persons who have avashuddha buddhi. But someone who genuinely attains Brahman realization and becomes merged in the Brahman effulgence will never fall down. And then, quietly, not vigorously, show me some other scriptural reference that says otherwise, and I'll change my position. Not defiantly, but, they'll get on a soapbox, make a big deal about it. But very clearly, it's, to me, at least reading Srila Prabhupada's writings, there are distinctions, just like we just read. Persons who follow whatever the process, and they think because they're following this process, they're now liberated. They're not liberated because of a Shuddha Buddhi. They haven't taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, which gives Shuddha Buddhi. So it's not imagined. The entering the Brahmajyoti is not imagined. It's sayuja, like it's a stage of transcendence. But it's incomplete. And because it's incomplete, the sense of wishing completeness but not moving from that incomplete position, they can come to material activity. So bringing up a controversy that I don't have an answer to yet, scripturally speaking, other than the abundance of Prabhupada making these two distinctions. There's something that is very clear, that's not with no controversy, is the position of mukti is not sought by a devotee, because the position of devotional service is from the position of transcendence. Is that right? Is that statement right? Should I say it again? I'm looking at you. You're going to answer my question. Putting you in the hot seat. I'll ask the question again. Ready? The platform of devotional service is the platform of transcendence. One who is engaged in devotional service is doing so from the platform of this transcendence, because bhakti is from the platform of transcendence. Is that statement true or not? You're not sure. You're pretty silent. I'm not looking behind you. No, I'm not looking at Sri Rupa. I'm looking at... No, looking at you. You sit in the front row, you're going to get picked on. That's how it works. That's okay. Wondered why you're being silent. No, look, that's because you weren't responding. It's like, do you have a scriptural reference for what I just said? No? Okay. Does anybody have a scriptural reference for what I just said? So that's mad bhaktim labate param. Mad bhaktim labate. Labate means obtain or attain. Mad bhaktim labate param. That's the platform of Shuddha Bhakti begins from the Brahmabhuta platform. Suppose, can one engage in devotional service before one reaches Shuddha Bhakti? Absolutely. So is there another scripture reference that says bhakti is performed from the transcendental position? Because it is transcendental. One who engages in at once, one attains that position just by engaging in bhakti. Is there a Bhagavad Gita verse or any other verse that you know that says that?
I was also thinking about it, I'm not good at memorizing verses, but I was just reading like chapter 3, and it describes like the levels and gets bhakti, right?
Yes. But now, so somebody's engaging in bhakti. Tomorrow's Krishna Janmashtami. A lot of people are going to come to the temple tomorrow, probably. Especially because Radhanath Maharaj is going to be here. A lot of people will come to the temple tomorrow. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitaitan brahmabhoyaya kalpate. You have a Bhagavad Gita in the house? Find the verse. Find the verse and then read the verse. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. Index. Mam cha yo vyabhichari. So this is avyabhichari bhakti. Avyabhichari bhakti is undivided devotional service. That's elevated devotional service. Mam cha yo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. Saganan samati chaitan brahmabhoyaya kalpate. Translation?
One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman.
Okay, so now read the purport.
This verse is a reply to Arjuna's third question. What is the means of attaining to the transcendental position? As explained before, the material world is acting under the spell of the modes of material nature. One should not be disturbed by the activities of the modes of nature. Instead of putting his consciousness into such activities, he may transfer his consciousness to Kṛṣṇa activities. Kṛṣṇa activities are known as bhakti yoga, always acting for Kṛṣṇa. This includes not only Kṛṣṇa, but his different plenary expansions, such as Ram and Narayan. He has innumerable expansions. One who is engaged in the service of any of the forms of Kṛṣṇa, or of his plenary expansions, is considered to be transcendentally situated. One should also note that all the forms of Kṛṣṇa are fully transcendental, blissful, full of knowledge, and eternal. Such personalities of Godhead are omnipotent and omniscient, and they possess all transcendental qualities. So if one engages himself in the service of Kṛṣṇa or his plenary expansions with unfailing determination, although these modes of material nature are very difficult to overcome, one can overcome them easily. This has already been explained in the 7th chapter. One who surrenders unto Kṛṣṇa at once surmounts the influence of the modes of material nature. To be in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, or in devotional service, means to acquire equality with Kṛṣṇa. The Lord says that his nature is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge, and the living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme, as gold particles are part of a gold mine. Thus the living entity, in his spiritual position, is as good as gold, as good as Kṛṣṇa in quality. The difference of individuality continues, otherwise there would be no question of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means that the Lord is there, the devotee is there, and the activity of exchange of love between the Lord and the devotee is there. Therefore, the individuality of two persons is present in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual person. Otherwise, there would be no meaning to bhakti yoga. If one is not situated in the same transcendental position with the Lord, one cannot serve the Supreme Lord. To be a personal assistant to a king, one must acquire the qualifications. Thus, the qualification is to become Brahman, or freed from all material contamination. It is said in the Vedic literature, Brahmaiva san Brahmapyeti. One can attain the Supreme Brahman by becoming Brahman. This means that one must qualitatively become one with Brahman. By attainment of Brahman, one does not lose his eternal Brahman identity as an individual soul.
What's the 7th chapter reference? In the sentence that you read, it says this is the position of going beyond the modes. It comes about by surrender to Kṛṣṇa. Daiviyeshu gunamayi mamamaya duracaya. Right? Mam eva ye prapadyante. Maya metam tarantite. You're not good at slokas. Okay.
Oh. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the 3 modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it.
That's good. That's good. So, the platform of devotional service is the transcendental platform. Now, is it possible? The answer to this question is yes. Is it possible to oscillate or sometimes be in a surrendered mode or mood and sometimes slacken in one's mood of surrender and then feel the pinch and then become more surrendered again and then become complacent and then slacken and then not be beyond the modes of nature but being pushed and pulled and controlled by the modes of material nature? The answer is yes. But devotional service is the submission or the acceptance of the position of Kṛṣṇa and acting in that acceptance of the position of Kṛṣṇa by serving him favorably. So then there's degrees of serving favorably and degrees of submission and all those things. But the platform of devotional service is the platform of transcendence. So the message we heard Prabhupada say like 5 times in the purport, it's the duty of the spiritual master, it's the function of the spiritual master to find the ways and means for individuals to engage in service to Kṛṣṇa favorably under the guidance of the scriptural instructions. And it's celebrated in this verse. It's a really nice verse. It's a nice verse to glorify Srila Prabhupada on Vyasa Puja Day. That the acharya, right in the demigods' prayers, the acharya is one who leaves behind the boat that they used to cross the ocean of material existence. Even when they're on the other side of the ocean of material existence, they leave that boat behind. That means their literatures or their instructions, their nice example. And, for that matter, the pastime of Kṛṣṇa, what we're doing in honor of Kṛṣṇa Janmashtami, before and during and after and so on, is reciting the pastimes of Kṛṣṇa, the qualities of Kṛṣṇa, the loving exchanges that Kṛṣṇa has with his devotees. That's the boat. What's the qualification to get on the boat? Just sit and listen. Of course, then there's degrees of listening. And the degrees of listening have a lot to do with not the only factor, but have a lot to do with one's eagerness to connect with Kṛṣṇa. Supposing one's eagerness is, I want the heck out of here because it's a crazy place. That's the liberationist idea. And then that can be, rise and fall. It's intermittent, depending upon how much the material energy is pinching. And if it's pinching a lot, then attentiveness goes up. And if the pinching subsides, then complacency is likely to set in. Commonly. So then the continued hearing is necessary to sustain the eagerness to achieve Kṛṣṇa. I'm thinking about this. It's an application point. Just today, got a letter from a devotee in China who's a medical doctor in a hospital. And the circumstance with the pandemic has been such that their life has become more crazy than usual because of the pandemic. And the level of demand upon them, because they're not only a good doctor, but they're good at organizing doctors, so their workload has become. So they have very little time and opportunity for association, and their expression. I just responded to this letter. The expression was, "I have unflinching faith, but at the same time, I feel I've become a little complacent because I just have trust, and so I'm not really trying so much. And I don't have time, discretionary time either." So someone that has some piety, let's say a substantial several lifetimes worth of piety, they may be able to sustain on the strength of that piety, but it's not going to last forever. Or say it differently, the act of submission needs to be dynamic. Some of us have been practicing Kṛṣṇa consciousness for some number of years. How about you two? How long have you two been practicing Kṛṣṇa consciousness? How many years? 30? Something like that? Yes. So notch it up to over 50 years of devotional service. Krishna's mercy. My point is, the ongoing submission is needed, and that ongoing submission, the inspiration is to make that Kṛṣṇa conscious, make that connection with Kṛṣṇa. Not just go back home, back to Godhead, like I don't want to be in this crazy place any longer. But back home, back to Godhead means, in a more positive sense, to being in our relationship with Kṛṣṇa. And back to the text we just read, the spiritual master's function or duty, role, is to find the ways and means to make that happen. Perhaps customized for a particular individual, but at the same time, provide the means in a general sense for the whole of humanity. That's how a major acharya is thinking, as Srila Prabhupada, or here mentioned Rupa Goswami. provide the ways and the means for people that are struggling unnecessarily in the material world to get relief from that struggle. How to make that Krishna conscious connection. So after all is said and done, all those nice boats that are left behind, one may not get on the boat. And you don't get on the boat, and the waves and the whirlpools of the ocean material existence will continue. So it's like the carrot and the stick. The stick is, whew. And just when you think something that's turmoil, major turmoil, subsides a bit, here comes another one. And it just keeps going. So the real solution is not just make the turmoil less or terminate. There's a platform, the transcendental life. Krishna appears just as the statements that demigods are making. He comes because of his compassion upon persons of this world. Otherwise, why does he come? To attract our hearts and minds. Not just, while we're reading the Bhagavatam or reading Krishna book or in a kirtan, but, those times, of course, but direct our lives towards being always in our relationship with Krishna. Like that's a full-time job. Just like the verse, Mam Choyo Vyabhicharena Bhakti. So Avyabhichari Bhakti is undivided devotion. Undivided devotion. Or Mam Evaye Prapadyante Maya Me Tam Tarantite. Those who take full shelter in me can cross beyond the modes of nature. Summary. Bhakti is the essence. And the essence of bhakti is this submission in service. Because if we don't have submission in service to Krishna, there's going to be submission in service to some other master. Submission in service to Krishna. Then, who's Krishna? And knowing and hearing more and more and more the details about Krishna helps the submission unto Krishna, the knowing who that person is who is worthy of my service and surrender and submission, and not just worthy, but is very attractive to that innate nature within me to serve someone, because that's our innate nature. Serve the all-attractive. And the attractiveness of the all-attractive is part of the hearing process. I volunteered to give the morning class tomorrow in Naperville. And I'm thinking I'd like to hear the probably 2-hour class that Radhanath Maharaj is going to give tomorrow morning on the topic of Krishna's appearance. I'm sure it'll be very wonderful. So let's see if there's some discussion. Is that a timer?
Yeah, that's
Am I in the air? Okay.
Guru Maharaj, I've heard this verse about acharyas leaving the boats behind before, but today it clicked for the first time that this is one of the prayers of the demigods.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, in the Bhagavatam, when the demigods offer prayers, they glorify the Lord and they glorify his qualities. And I find it interesting that at this very pregnant moment, right before Krishna's appearance, and no pun intended there, they're choosing to glorify the acharya. Such a significant, such a beautiful, deep verse glorifying the acharya when they're waiting for Krishna's appearance. And I'm wondering if there's any significance behind that.
Nice thought. The demigods are elevated and learned and mixed. They're although they're elevated and learned and mixed, and also powerful, they recognize the limitations of their powerfulness. Therefore, they went to the Supreme Lord and offered the prayers that he appear. Now they know, and he confirmed, I will appear. Now they're knowing that he's about to appear, and so they're looking up to Kṛṣṇa, although he's within the womb and speaking of his lotus feet and all those things, as if it's a child within the womb of a mother. But with the appearance of the Supreme Lord comes others that they also look up to. The demigods look up to the Supreme Lord, and the demigods look up to the great souls who are more intimately connected with the Supreme Lord than they are. And being in the presence of Kṛṣṇa helps that remembrance of, how they look up to in other words, when Brahma became a little testy, seeing Krishna's killing of Aghasura, and so what's the limit of his power, and testing his power against Krishna's power, although he knows his power comes from Kṛṣṇa. So what's he doing? Testing his power against Kṛṣṇa. See what Krishna's going to do, to show the unlimitedness of Krishna's power. He lapsed into forgetfulness, and Kṛṣṇa cleared his forgetfulness. He reciprocated with his curiosity. So when Brahma offers his prayers, Brahma does the same. He's offering prayers to Kṛṣṇa, but he's offering prayers to the associates of Kṛṣṇa, particularly the associates in Vrindavan, who he's looking up to. So your question to what is their significance? They're looking up, and they're looking up. They see Kṛṣṇa, and they also see those who are very dear to Kṛṣṇa, more dear to Kṛṣṇa than they are. As persons of this world, they'd be looking up to the demigods because they bestow necessities or fulfill desires, temporal desires. Devotees should look up beyond the demigods. From where are they deriving their powers? And those who are even above the demigods to be looked up to are the great acharyas. So it's the significance is they're getting this realization and expressing it, looking up to Kṛṣṇa, seeing there's the acharyas that carry one beyond this ocean of material existence to Kṛṣṇa. And that's the purport. And the function of such acharyas is exactly that. So how does that practically apply to us? Well, making a distinction between how we regard the demigods and how we regard acharyas, that's a practical application. But here's another one. Supposing we have roles in life where there are persons who are looking to us, like your boys are looking to you to maintain them. And that's a function. Like, where's the ability to maintain them come from? It comes from Kṛṣṇa. So, but it's just a function on behalf of Kṛṣṇa to maintain them. But greater than that, the function that's greater than that is the setting the example and giving the means by which to cross the ocean of material existence, not just maintaining. Because otherwise it remains within animal life or material conditioned life. And material conditioned life can be applied in service to Kṛṣṇa with this higher principle. So that's the higher principle. As we're looking up to Kṛṣṇa, that's the higher principle function. The demigods don't have that capacity like the acharyas have. The acharyas may not have the capacity of the demigods. They have greater capacity than the demigods on the spiritual plane. And they're more likely to not become demigods in their next life or go to the heavenly planets in their next life. They're more likely to go to Kṛṣṇa because of that, the consciousness and then the service rendered. So how does this apply to us? We have different roles, and some of them may be taking care of others kind of roles, which is nice. Nice. Serving others in that capacity is nice. Beyond that is, and more important than that is, the service of the acharyas. So in our relationships with others, that's the greater function. Because it'll more effectively help people look up to Kṛṣṇa by our association than if we just do things to help people. Anything else? No,
I have kind
I'm
of...
looking at her, so she's getting nervous. Your sister.
I wanted to give anyone else a chance because mine is kind of a tangent. Is that okay, Maraj? My question is kind of a tangent off of your topic.
Sure.
Okay. So as I was listening to you talking about connecting with Kṛṣṇa through all your daily activities, my thought was just how practically that looks in my life. And I feel like that's me serving his devotees. That's how I see me serving him, is through his devotees.
Good.
And so something I've been doing recently is I've been reading the biography of Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And it had me thinking, and this is like a fundamental philosophy question, but I was somehow confused when I was thinking of how I was really connecting with him through the book. But when I was thinking about praying to him, I had the thought that we're all the souls and we're not the body. So when we leave the body, don't we not identify with that identity anymore? So if I'm praying to Bhakti Tirtha Swami, that was who he was here. And now he's with Prabhupada, or even with Prabhupada. Then I started thinking, how are we connecting with the acharyas when what we know of them is from the material world? I think I might have some big misunderstanding somewhere that needs some clarity.
Let's go to the six Goswamis first, before Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Because what applies to them in a micro may apply to him. So they appeared in this world and they did wonderful things. And they wrote and they taught and they exemplified what they wrote. And when we pray to them, what is it that we're praying to? Are we praying to, the physical manifestation only? Are we praying to or thinking of them or taking shelter of them or calling out to them based upon just the physical manifestation? Or is it they're very different. There's some similarities, and they're very different in their personality, the way that they said what they said, the way that they did what they did, the types of things they did. Very different, very different. Personalities, very different. And so now there's 6 of them instead of 1 of them, Bhaktitirtha Swami. But, there's by that effort that I spent, I feel, a more personal connection with each one of them, or, selectively different ones. And, surprisingly, some take a more prominent position, and then another takes a more prominent position. And so that back to your question, is it something temporal? Because we know, by revelation, we know they have their spiritual identity, eternal spiritual identity, that's not temporal, in their relationship with Kṛṣṇa. And so I can think of the 6 Goswamis in terms of either. And it's the manifestation is to set an example for us in this world, while they're not of this world, but they're showing in their personality, in their style, their way of everything, to show by example, and to give teachings that go beyond the temporal. So when I'm praying to them, I'm not praying to just the temporal. It's, certainly acknowledging the manifestation and appreciating the temporal. And appreciating the kind of loving reciprocation that Kṛṣṇa had with each one of them. And take any one of them. My thought's going to Gopal Bhatta at the moment. So Kṛṣṇa manifested Radharaman. And then he started feeling later, this isn't right. Lord Chaitanya is my worshipable Lord. And so Lord Chaitanya would from time to time show himself in his Radharaman deity. He just reciprocated with his devotee, according to the intensity of love of that devotee. According to the nature of that love of that devotee, Kṛṣṇa reciprocated. So that's a principal essence of appreciating great personalities, the loving reciprocation that Kṛṣṇa exhibits, and the variegatedness of that love that the devotee feels for Kṛṣṇa, and how Kṛṣṇa reciprocates with the love of that devotee in different ways, and their ways of displaying humility and so forth. So there's the spiritual even within the material, is my answer to your question. It takes a bit to see the spiritual within the material, but it's definitely for great personalities, there's spiritual exhibition even within the material, for sure. So now take that to Bhaktitirtha Swami. Pretty amazing person. And you've been reading his biography, so he's an amazing person. He wasn't an ordinary person. In many ways, but look at the reciprocation. Kṛṣṇa had him grow up in a ghetto, and he had next to nothing, and his mother taught him a value, and so forth and so on and so forth and so on and so on and so on. So he's showing an extraordinary personality, exceptional personality. for us to value. So, but there's the spiritual that's within the material. And he's not one of the 6 Goswamis, but he is a spiritual personality living in our time, an extraordinary character and quality of his devotion to Prabhupada and the mission of Lord Chaitanya, and how he did creatively and so forth. So you should see the spiritual within the material. So there's the material, but see there's the spiritual within the material and how, at least in his case, it manifests. And then you look at yourself and what about my case? And how's the spiritual going to manifest within the material? And that's where the inspiration goes, and the prayer goes to with Bhakti Tirtha Swami, you can put your own words to it, but the intensity and consistency of his service mood and prayerful mood and risk-taking mood to put everything on the line, and he lived his life that way. Right to the end. That's the nature of the person. The spiritual within the material. Does that answer your question?
Guru Maharaj, often in your classes, you speak these terse sutra-like statements, and I find them to be like cotton balls. You pull them apart, and there's a whole world inside them.
Okay.
So today you said, the act of submission needs to be dynamic, and that adjective dynamic really resonates with me, because often when we begin our journey of submission, it's very cookie cutter or it's very external. So I'm wondering if you would be willing to, from your 50 years of experience, shed some light on this adjective you used, dynamic, to describe submission.
Well, the latest application of that principle for me is japa. At the challenge, if the challenge with japa can be met, the challenge with life can be met in terms of this dynamic submission. And there's different ways of expressing it, mindful chanting or one mantra at a time chanting, and then to stay there. And it's not just, one mantra at a time, then string together a bunch of mantras. It's a from the heart submission, a dynamic submission unto Kṛṣṇa through the medium of his holy name. And it's not easy to, it's not mechanical to maintain that. You can use tools, but the tools, you'll get distracted from the tools without the essence of dynamic submission. And conversely, the more that is done, the dynamic submission in terms of our day-to-day application of things in life will be there. Not just, being service-minded and helping others kind of thing. I'm looking at your mother. Your daughter here shared with me more than one occasion how much inspired she was just to follow you around at the temple every day. Because she saw firsthand that you were always doing something in service, that somebody just was walking by because it wasn't their service, and you would see it and you would take care of it because you're service-minded. And then the service-mindedness can be like, like a mother for others, but then the transcendental service is for Kṛṣṇa always. And that's not cheap. It's like there's a very nice purport I like in Canto 6, Chapter 1, where a question is being raised. I forget exactly now how the chapter begins. Well, anyway, Jiva Goswami is explaining that bhakti has its beginning, and one of the earliest stages of the formation of bhakti is just the seed desire to serve. Because he doesn't explain it this way, but it's the seed desire to serve is of the soul. So some persons like to come to the temple, and they just like to do some service. And that's not everybody that's like that, but some people are like that. Some people, from very well-established people I know, their favorite activity is going to the temple on Sunday and washing pots. IT people with big jobs and big income and big house and big this and that. And their happiness is just doing some simple service at the temple. And they look forward to it. They feel something. That's what makes them look forward to it. They feel clean inside, and that's a nice feeling. Feel clean inside. And they're not really, special sadhakas or readers of Prabhupada's books so much. But it's a beginning. And that beginning is to be nourished by hearing, because then it draws the attention towards the object more than just what we're experiencing, but the object of service. And the more that, back to your question, the opposite of complacency, or the continued enthusiasm towards the objective without slackening, that's bhakti. It's not going to be achieved some other way. And that's the journey. Just looking around, each of us have our propensities. So how is that propensity best connected back to the purport here about the boat crossing the ocean? What's that method by which I, or we, any one of us, can best make that Kṛṣṇa connection and be consistent with it, with enthusiasm? It doesn't wane. It doesn't vacillate. Becomes spontaneous. It's our true self, to realize who we really are on the spiritual platform. That's a nice thing to wish for. And there's a path to get there. Something else? Sri Rupa? No? Okay. You knew I'd call on you. Anything? Yeah, you. Give him the microphone.
There has been something that I've been thinking about. Correct me if I'm wrong in this understanding, but when you mentioned that one devotee who said some people who get merged into Brahmajyoti, if they have the correct understanding or knowledge, they don't fall down, right?
That's their position.
So does it apply to all forms of, I mean, all four categories over there where there is the Paramatma realization and then where devotees reach Bhagavan? So I'm just wondering, so does that mean there is always these constant influx of souls that never get away from this material world?
Your question is, are there souls that never become released from their material bondage?
Yes, essentially.
Oh, yeah. It's in Bhagavad. I forever cast them into Dwaniac species, etc. There's no termination point. There's no guaranteed termination point. One can remain, its sojourn in the material world perpetually. That's your question?
Yeah, but that
Seems sad?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But Krishna doesn't interfere. He sends messengers and bangs us on the head, and he does different things. But some people say no. So he doesn't interfere. Okay, that's it. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. You have something. Oh! Shravan Mangala? I didn't see your hand.
I raised in the last.
Oh, okay.
Marsh, this feels like a very sensitive topic regarding the first part of the class you mentioned. Disciple follow the prescribed process in line with acharya to get the fruit of the devotional service. On the long journey, if disciples or devotees have a setbacks and they still have inclination to continue and move forward, would they still attain the full fruit?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Gurudev.
That was easy. I mean, no, attaining full swarup isn't easy, but the answer is easy. You know, Krishna is kind. Then one has to align oneself or orient oneself or configure oneself towards that kindness. He's very kind and all powerful. He can pick us up, but we don't, we have to want to be picked up. And he'll ask us, are you sure? Because over here, there's none of that other stuff over there. You sure? And if we're not sure, then it's okay. He's very kind. But, 931 Bhagavad Gita is the answer to your question. Kshipram bhavati dharmadma.